You put out a very strongly worded statement following what seemed to be Jimmy Kimmel's show being put on ice indefinitely. And you really talk about it having been led to a shameful show of cowardly corporate capitulation by ABC that has put the foundation of the First Amendment in danger. So you think this is a corporate responsibility at this moment?
What we are seeing is this administration use whatever levers of power it has in order to bring broadcasters to heel. And the news media, as you mentioned, they have sued the New York Times, they have sued the Wall Street Journal, they have gone after ABC, NBC, CBS, and they are pressuring companies to change how they report the news and what their content is, in direct violation of the First Amendment, which guarantees a freedom of speech. And what happens every time we see this cowardly corporate capitulation is a further fraying of a foundation of our democracy, and that's freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
Now, what we understand to have occurred is that Disney moved after local stations had perhaps pushed back. This has all erupted after, well, the head of the commission, FCC chair Brendan Carr, joined a podcast and really articulated perhaps what could happen because of the words of Jimmy Kimmel on his broadcast. But also what he said, we can do this the easy way or the hard way on that Benny Johnson podcast, when it seemed to be talking about the Nexstar Tegna deal. Is that how you interpret it? Is that how the market and the media should be interpreting what FCC chair Brendan Carr is trying to make here?
I think it's really important to note that the FCC does not have the authority, the constitutional right, nor the ability to take action against broadcasters because of their content. We have very limited media regulation, usually designed to protect children programming and things like that. But we cannot retaliate against broadcasters for legal content. And this is all legal content. So what threats are meant to do is to get the companies to alter their practices in order to cover this administration in the way that they want. And that is what these corporations need to keep in mind. Every time they capitulate, they are harming our democracy.
Commissioner Gomez, I'm grateful for you coming on the program and what you just said about the remit and authority of the FCC. The basics that our audience want to understand is, why is the FCC involved here? It is a panel or a committee, right, that debates issues usually proposed by the chair in the public forum or in written communications, and then you vote on the passing of measures or actions. And stop me when I'm wrong on that. But you outlined what the authority of the FTC is not in this case. What is your role in this situation between Disney, Jimmy Kimmel, and the comments that he made?
So the FCC, as you know, does meet as a commission, and it votes to adopt rules or to issue licenses. But a lot of the actions that you're seeing from this commission right now, particularly when it comes to trying to bring media to heel, is being done at the staff level. And what's so dangerous about that is where we initiate investigations, until those investigations actually get to a final commission decision, there is no judicial review to ensure that the FCC doesn't overstep its bounds, which is exactly what we're doing right now. And you mentioned the Nexstar transaction, which is actually not currently before the FCC, but will be filed before the FCC. The FCC has been using any time a party comes in to seek a transfer of a license or some type of permission from the FCC to pressure them to alter their practices, directly affecting the First Amendment and getting them to voluntarily commit to making changes to how they report the news, or whether they have diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, which themselves have a strong basis in the First Amendment.
Commissioner, we've invited the chair, Mr. Carr, onto this program as well, and I want it to be known that that's the case. There is an example or a case study that our audience wants us to ask you about, and that is if Mr. Carr and the President wanted to initiate the revocation of a station's license based on that station airing of the Kimmel comments, for example. What needs to happen? Would there need to be an outside complaint filed to the FCC, then you review it. Just explain that scenario, please.
Yes. So revocations of licenses are extremely rare. We do have rules about under what circumstances we might revoke a license. And it is a very high standard because it is such a serious thing to do. That is why the broadcasters fear so much any type of action by the FCC. Yes, we can initiate an investigation based on a complaint that is filed. We can also initiate it ourselves. But let me be clear, there is no basis for revoking any licenses because of the Jimmy Kimmel content or because of normal editorial decisions from a broadcaster. The last time I can think of that we revoked a license was for failure to air a particular broadcaster for more than a year.
Well, Commissioner, and Caroline, I'm sorry to jump in here. You know, there are many Republicans and non-Republicans who feel that Kimmel's comments went past a line, they crossed a line and mischaracterized in the public domain the motivations of the shooter in the Charlie Kirk case. The FCC takes that into account, or it does not?
So we have to keep in mind that Jimmy Kimmel Show is satire. It is not news. It is not itself trying to inform the public about a particular newsworthy event. And what some of these people are claiming is that what Jimmy Kimmel said was news distortion. That really does not meet the standard for news distortion. So if a complaint were filed, the commission would have to look at it and make a decision about whether any rules were violated. I can tell you today, there were no violations under the law or with these facts.
Have any complaints been filed?
I believe a complaint was filed today. There is a partisan legal group that has been filing complaints against all the media companies, getting more and more outlandish in their complaints. Normally for news distortion, they're the same ones that filed the complaint against 60 Minutes for the Kamala Harris interview. They're the same ones that filed a complaint against NBC because of Saturday Night Live. The Saturday Night Live showing with Vice President Harris.
Yeah.
So they're a partisan organization that just keep filing these complaints, and the FCC has not acted on all of them. They are very numerous. I would say we get at least once a week.
I think it's right to put in the context that last year Disney indeed did pay $15 million to settle a defamation lawsuit brought by the president over comments that one of its hosts had already made. There have indeed been several settlements, and as Hannah Miller, our reporter, put in their story, then often there are deals and M&A involved. Mm-hmm. Is that the interpretation that we should make at this moment, that deals in some way hinge upon settling of such cases and concerns?
I think that the administration will use the deals to pressure companies one way or another, whether it's to settle lawsuits or to give up their rights as organizations. When the FCC approved the Paramount Skydance deal, for example, the parent company of CBS, Paramount agreed to install what I call a truth arbiter, an ombudsman reporting to the president of Paramount who will field complaints about media bias, for example. That is really chilling because that is exactly the type of interference in the freedom of the press that is not healthy for our democracy and for our discourse. So yes, I think this administration will weaponize any transaction. Anytime you see a party coming before the FCC, you are going to see some kind of a demand to bring them to heel and to change how any broadcaster reports on this administration to make it favorable to the administration and not otherwise.